Um, in elementary school, I refused to go out for recess because I wanted to stay in the classroom and rewrite my children's books. So writing emerged very early for me as a salvation and as a way to sort of make sense of my world. This is one book in particular that I remember. It's about this English woman who has a garden and a mansion on the coast. And she's got a pet hedgehog, and she accidentally waters him when she's watering and sowing her seeds, and then flowers grow on his back, and he wanders off, and she calls the police because someone stole her garden, or a section of her garden. And I always thought my children's books were too saccharine, and I would twist the plots and make the characters more dark. I mean, this was a little bit of an FBI clue for my teachers that maybe something wasn't right at home. So I changed this one and made it from the hedgehog's point of view, that he did this on purpose to escape this crazy lady that was keeping him captive in her seaside mansion. So needless to say, I was of concern to my teachers. And this is my second grade report card. And I underlined down at the bottom, or when I was doing research for my memoir, I was pulling up whatever I had from the 70s, and this jumped out at me. Have encouraged her to exchange phone numbers with classmates and get together with them. So she was always trying to throw me out of the room at recess. But I was perfectly happy alone with my books. I'm happy to report that I eventually learned how to make friends, and years later, I was able to turn this childhood into a book. And I was driven to write this memoir because, like all of you, I have a soundtrack to my life. This constant drumbeat of memories and emotions that plays on loop in my head. And for some people, that's really nice. And then for me, it was something that would turn into an earworm if I didn't write it down. And the story comes out because it can't not come out. And it feels a little bit like almost a delirium when I'm writing it. And actually, it's after the readers read it, then they reflect back to me what they think my book's about. And that's how I actually learned what the themes were in my book. I mean, to be honest. So because of that feedback loop, I've figured out how to quickly say what my book's about. So it's about the ancient wisdom of bees. Let me back up. It's also about the special bond between little girls and grandpas. It's about losing a mother to mental illness. And it's a love letter to the 70s. When we were all driving those gremlins and listening to the Bee Gees on 8-track and drinking Tab, right? So the story starts when I'm 5. And that's my little brother, Matthew. He was about 3. And like a lot of kids in the 70s, our parents divorced. But in my case, it sent our mother into a downward spiral from which she never returned. We were living in Rhode Island at the time in this house. It was a duplex. We lived in the left half of it. And I remember a big fight in the kitchen. My mom was extremely volatile. She would rip curtains down. She would throw pots of rice. This fight, I remember there was one of those big pepper grinders of wood that was like a foot tall, and it flew across the dining room table. And not long after that fight, I was on a plane with my mother and my baby brother. And when the plane landed, we were in California. And the 3 of us moved into my mother's childhood bedroom in my grandparents' house in Carmel Valley in the village. And this was a very tiny house, 2-bedroom, 1 bath. And I shared a bed with my mother, and my brother had a cot at the foot of the bed. And that was our living arrangement for the next decade. As my mother slipped into a marathon melancholy, she just got into bed and really didn't get out. And my father was never mentioned again. And my grandmother became absorbed in my mother's problems, so we gravitated toward my grandfather. And he was an eccentric mountain man who had more than 100 beehives along the coast, tucked into the rugged canyons of Big Sur. This is a gift, either birthday or Christmas, and we didn't get new things very often. And Grandpa didn't want to like use his wheelbarrow right away. He didn't want to scratch it, so he left it in the living room, and then he started sitting in it. And he liked to watch nature programs like Jacques Cousteau. So that's him with a glass of champagne, watching Jacques Cousteau in his makeshift recliner. And every spring and summer, our phone, we had a red rotary phone in the kitchen. It would ring off the hook with people calling about bees in their trees and in their homes and under their cars, and or in the hoods of their cars. And he and I would race out, drop what we were doing, race out to his truck and go get them. And this is, I'm sure a lot of you recognize this. This is a coast highway in Big Sur, Highway 1. And this is the route we'd take to get to his bee yards. And this is Palo Colorado Road. So we'd get back into the canyons back there. So we'd take a left and drive until the pavement ran out, and then it would look like this. And you needed a four-wheel drive and preferably a chainsaw in the back in case you had to cut through a tree that fell down. And it was really tight switchbacks. We had to honk when we were around the curves because there was not room for two if there was a car coming the other way. And just to kind of give you a sense of where I'm talking about, this is the coast highway on the left. And then the pin is where his apiary was there in Garrapata Canyon. So we would have to drive, and you can see there really aren't manicured roads getting there. And the reason he tucked them away like that was because, well, first they were away from people and who might mess with them. Also, there was a source of water. Garrapata Creek is nearby. It's protected from the wind. And then also the topography, the land is covered with coastal sage. So all the bees really had to do was fly out of the hive, go to the top of the ridge, and then start feasting and get heavier and heavier and just float back down to the landing board. So it was a real easy ride for bees there. And then sage honey, as I'm sure a lot of you know, is really prized honey like Tupelo or Manuka because it's, well, delicious, but it also never crystallizes. It's really light too. It can almost with water. So Grandpa was known for his sage honey. And this is a picture of him in his bee yard there in Garrapata. So he would bring me with him to his bee yards and he would apprentice me. This is him, total old school, just a veil, no protection other than that. This is him in his backyard in Carmel Valley. He had bees there too. And he subscribed to the beekeeper belief that venom prevents arthritis. My grandmother had arthritis and she never went near the hives and he never had it. So that was his scientific proof. But he also believed that without gloves, you have to be more careful, and you can also sense the bees much better. You can feel their vibration and their mood, and you can sense if they're itchy or calm, and it forces you to be very careful to not get one under your fingers and squeeze them by accident. Oops, sorry about that. So when I would go with Grandpa, he would show me how honeybees make sacrifices for the colony. And we like to look for the queen. And he would explain to me that she's the only bee in the hive that lays eggs, but she can't feed herself or get water or keep warm at night, and relies on her daughters to take care of her. And he would explain to me that her daughters surround her and hug her at night and keep her warm. And so what he was doing was teaching me about the mother-daughter bond. And even though I didn't have one at home, it is a natural occurrence in nature. And I think he was, in his own way, trying to soothe me about my own situation. So I think he was modeling for me through his vocation, I guess the generosity and the love that was missing from my life. And slowly over time, I learned how to trust again. And the title of the book comes from this World War II Army bus that was marooned in our backyard. He tore out all the seats and built his honey factory inside. And that's where we extracted every summer and fall. And he built his whole system inside out of old spare junk. He got this bus from a friend who got it at auction at the Fort Ord military base. Apparently towards the end of World War II, there was a ton of surplus that wasn't being used, and he bought it from the friend, and he was actually driving this thing down to his hives in Big Sur, but it quickly became obvious that it couldn't make it on the roads. Plus, it was so expensive to fill it with gas that he gave up, and he parked it in the backyard and tore out the engine and gave it to a friend. And that's where it stayed for 60-something years. So to my grandmother's great chagrin, it was parked here. I made an sort of Where's Waldo arrow for you there. And there's a closer view. And he used old pallets for stairs, and he entered through the back door. And there wasn't a key. There was like a rod at a 90-degree angle that you shoved into a hole in the back of the bus and twisted and popped the lock. That's how you got in. And if you can see, like next to my dog there's like a cylinder outside the bus. That's a propane tank, and he heated a kettle on top of it, and then he ran tubing from the spout of the kettle through a hole in the side of the bus, and then attached the other end with duct tape to his hot knife, and that's how he heated up his hot knife. And this is what it looks like inside. As you can see, it is very DIY and obviously not OSHA approved. Those are old Wesson cans, 5-gallon metal Wesson cans in the corner, because his customers would buy large quantities from him. And there's the spinner. It held, I want to say 12. There were 6 baskets in there, and each basket held 2 frames, I believe. And there he is. This is, you guys know so much, so I'm altering how I give this slideshow, but here we are taking out honey, and then there's that hot knife I told you about. You can see the tubes running up to it. And you guys are lucky I found some photos where he's actually wearing pants because it got so hot in the bus and we couldn't open the windows because the bees would come in. Well, I'm sure the windows probably didn't even work anymore. They were probably stuck shut, but it got really hot in there, like a sauna. And so he'd often just strip down to his BVDs and his Chuck Taylor sneakers and work that way. So I had to search for some appropriate photos of him, but there's him putting it in the spinner, and his spinner was powered with by an engine he'd ripped out of a lawnmower. So he'd have to like pull the what's that called? The crank when you get a motor going on a lawnmower, like he would have to get that going to make his spinner go. And then that pumped the honey up through these galvanized steel plumbing pipes you can kind of see in the background. And then those dripped over holding tanks that he just stretched cheesecloth across the top. And he held the pipes in place with this like fishing wire that he suspended from the handrails. And yeah, and every summer we harvested honey in there. And the honey bus, you know, it gave me a job, it gave me something to do, it gave me a place to go, and it became almost like a confessional. You know, it was the one place where I could talk about my feelings, you know, away from the rest of the family. And Grandpa would counsel me, but not directly. He would talk to me in bee metaphors, and he would tell me stories about how bees solve problems. And I remember we talked a lot about the scout bee, and you know, I'm sure you know the bees dance to share information about where to find the flowers, but he would also talk to me about how scout bees look for a new home when there's something wrong with the colony is in currently. You know, it's getting too crowded, or it's damp or drafty. And then he would tell me that the bees would, scout bees would come back and dance to share the address of the better home they'd found with the rest of the bees. And then he'd say, I don't know, like the bees have a meeting or something inside, but they pick a day and a time and they fly to their new home. And that's when you see one of these. And I realize now what Grandpa was trying to say to me is that maybe the home I had wasn't the best place for me, but there was another home out there waiting for me if I took the initiative to go out and find it. So I think what he was doing in his own sort of Buddha way was giving a little girl a concept of a future and giving me ultimately hope. So this is, I'll just say one last thing. This is the paperback that just came out in March, and the publisher changed the cover from the yellow cover with a picture of his bus on it to this because the reader response to Grandpa was so huge. People mostly are responding that they love him, and they love that it's a story about alternative family because he's actually my step-grandfather. And they're really responding to, well, that bond. So anyway, they put him on the cover, which I think is amazing because in my mind, it makes him immortal and it allows him to live on, and his gentle, kind way of moving through the world to be shared with other people, and other people get to befriend him, and hopefully this book will just keep going long after I'm gone, and he'll still be making people feel better long into the future. So I'm super happy with this new cover. So I will answer anything you want to ask me. And thanks for listening. Let me stop sharing my screen so we can see each other now. Where's my, hold on a minute. Oh, I know why it's doing that. Okay. Stop share. There, we're back.
Meredith, that's an awesome story. And I look forward to reading that book. That's really exciting. I mean, I know like you were supposed to be doing presentations with Book Passage, like during COVID-19. Do you have recommendations for the best way to get the book? Do you have recommendations for how?
Oh yeah. If, well, bookstores are opening now, so I would say if you can go into your local bookstore wearing a mask, but also you can call ahead and they can put a bag together for you. And a lot of them were doing curbside pickup for your books. That's what I would do. But it's also available on the big
I'm sure
marketplace that starts with an A. Which I use a lot, especially where I live. I'm kind of rural and I have to use it. So yeah, it's there too. It's also available audiobook and download what's that, Kindle, if you need to stay at your house.
Does anyone have any questions for Meredith?
Well, I would ask, Meredith, where exactly are you living now relative to where your grandpa lived? And where are your bees and what are you doing with your current beekeeping?
Okay. I'm going to show, well, I'm living in Carmel Valley and let's see. My bees, I was going to try and show you exactly, but I'll just tell you. I moved back to my hometown last August, and I always wanted to come back. I miss this place a lot, and it has not changed a ton since the 70s. It's still really friendly. It's still very small town. I mean, there are a bunch of wineries and wine tasting rooms now. That's really the only thing that's different. But the house I am in now faces the backside of the Santa Lucia Mountains. So I'm 1,800 feet up on a mountain past Carmel Valley Village in a place called Kashawa. And when we first came to look at the house, I saw that ridge line and I thought, God, that looks familiar. And I think Garapata is just right on the other side, and it is. I'm like 12 miles in a straight line behind where I was with my grandpa when I was a little girl.
How long will it take you to get there now? You have to go back all the way down the valley and down the coast and back up again?
Yeah, if I want to get there, I have to drive over an hour.
Yeah.
But if I were a bird, I could just fly over there.
Or a bee.
Yeah. Yeah, or a bee. But what's really cool is within a week of moving, a neighbor had an old valley oak tree that fell over and cracked open, and it was full of bees. And I ran over there and got them. I completely think that was a housewarming gift from you-know-who.
I see Peter Bauer has a question. Peter?
Meter, thank you so much for sharing your pictures of the bus inside. I too learned from the World War II guys and their improvised contraptions. We didn't have a bus, and what it really got a kick out of was the World War II guys were always in swimsuits when taking honey off because it was so hot.
Oh, funny.
So it was just, I really related to the part of your grandfather being in, shorts, and no shirt when he's taking off the honey. In fact, I was showing some pictures of honey operation, when I was in the Kyrgyz Republic, and they were asking, why are you guys never wear shirts when you're taking the honey off? Why are you always in swimsuits? I said, because it's so hot. So anyway, thank you for sharing that.
Oh,
I guess,
that's hilarious. I thought Grandpa was the only one who did that.
Any other questions for Meredith?
I want to know more about her hive on top of the Chronicle building.
Oh, right. We were going to discuss that. In 2011, I worked at the San Francisco Chronicle as a feature writer from 1999 to 2015. And 2011, I caught wind that the Home and Garden editor, Deb Wandell, was going to get bees and put them on the roof. The Chronicle building was actually two buildings. There was a smaller building in an alley behind the main newsroom, Fifth and Mission. And this smaller building had the food writers in it, and they had a test kitchen in there, and they had a food or a cookbook library, and this old grain elevator that went up through the test kitchen in the library, and it went to the roof, and they had a rooftop garden up there. It was a sweet setup. And they wanted to get bees. I caught wind of it, and I asked if I could help, and they said, oh, do you know something about bees? I said, yeah, I do. And they said, oh, please help us. So that's how I got involved. And it was a really fortunate timing because my grandfather was becoming fragile, and he could no longer lift the supers. And so after 70 years, he reluctantly put his hive tool down, and it really affected him. He was a lot more morose. It was just very sad to me. So I had been thinking at the same time, well, what if I get bees and then he can mentor me? And so this all coincided at the same time. And it was beautiful because I did have a million questions because I only had a child's memory of beekeeping. Like, I was just in charge of the smoker. I didn't understand that beekeeping was entomology and pest control and mating issues, and I didn't. So I was calling him all the time and driving down and bringing him the articles, and I got to write about him in the Chronicle about why I was interested in beekeeping, and it was great. He came alive again, and then he started giving me all of his old equipment. Like he made jigs out of redwood that he would use to string his frames, and so I used his old stuff. So it was nice. And when he passed, he had sheds of stuff, sheds I didn't even know existed, and I ended up giving a lot of his tools and suits and smokers and whatnot to beekeepers in Big Sur who knew him, and the maintenance guys at Nepenthe who knew him really well too. Used a lot of his stuff. So I kept some, and then I just spread it back into the community he came from.
Great.
And was the honey bus probably scrapped, unfortunately?
Yeah, I mean, you probably could have blown on it and would have fallen over. I mean, I investigated trying to rehab it or like use it educationally for kids, but it was literally like crumbling. So, but I managed to save. There were these very cool oblong windows above the square windows all around the bus, and I saved a bunch of them. My wife is a really good photographer, and she took a lot of pictures of Grandpa in the bus, and she's gonna silver plate some pictures on those glass windows, and we're gonna hang them up in a window. So that's gonna be nice when she ever does that. So she's also a lieutenant in San Francisco Police Department. I mean, that's her job. So she's up there right now trying to keep everybody peaceful.
How's she doing?
How is she doing, or what is she doing?
No, how is she doing right now with everything up there?
She's actually in the best place she can be because her assignment is at the academy, and she develops training to teach her colleagues about implicit bias. So she's kind of already on this path about reforming the police departments. So she's doing well. She's very tired though because she's getting called on all day long to help figure things out and come up with plans and talk to the media and whatnot. So she's fighting the good fight, but she's tired. Yeah.
I have one last question about what was your job in the bus? You already said you did the smoker.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of asking as a grandfather who has, 2 granddaughters and a grandson, and kind of what was your job as when you were a little kid? What did you do?
I hung from the handrails upside down most of the time, like monkey bars. He taught me how to use the hot knife and uncap the honey, which I think is ridiculous that he let me hold that thing. But I did that, and I put the frames into the spinner, and I got to, the spinner had like a crank on it to like change the direction, and I got to pull on the crank and then jar the honey out of those big holding tanks. And then he taught me how to chew on the wax and then spit it back into the trough.
Meredith, how much honey could he produce in that area? Like how many pounds per year could you guys process?
I figured this out once. It was about 1,600 pounds a year.
Out of how many hives?
Well, it varied. I mean, at the high point, he had 200 or 300.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But towards the end, I think he only had like a couple dozen, maybe. I asked him one time how much money he made, and I got in trouble. That was the wrong question because he wasn't into it for that. And he was the kind of guy who, he was also a plumber, and I heard from several people, and I remember my grandmother complaining about this too, that he wouldn't collect on his bills. He just was like, not that he would forget, he just didn't care. He didn't care. So I don't actually know how big his operation was. I mean, financially, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious for the production there along the coast, like you said, with the sage. Yeah, it doesn't seem so much along the coast here in Marin, per hive. But from what you're saying, probably, about the same, per hive.
Yeah, people would just leave jars with notes on our doorstep, and then Grandpa would fill the jars and then, take the check or whatever.
That's how I do my honey operation.
Yeah.
I've got a question. Have you been intentionally coy about your grandfather's name?
What about my grandfather's name?
You haven't mentioned his name in your whole talk. What was his name?
Oh, you're going to get a kick out of this. His name is Edward Franklin Peace, Peace.
Thank you.
So his history is he is a descendant of William Brainerd Post, who is one of the first homesteaders in Big Sur. If you've heard of the Post Ranch, it's that family. So William came from New England as a teenager to work in the whaling industry. He was at the whaling station in Monterey, rendering blubber and getting the bones out for corsets. Yeah. So William fell in love with a Native American Ohlone woman from Carmel Valley, and her name was Anselma Onisimo, and they together built this huge ranch, the Post Ranch. and they had cattle, and they had, they would lead pack horse trips into the back country, and they'd have big dinner parties, and they had bees because I have old photo albums from the 1900s that show there were bees. So that's how I know I'm a 5th generation, because Anselma and William Brainerd Post had a baby named Ellen, and Ellen had a baby named Ellen, and that second Ellen had a baby, and that was my grandpa. So he was part Native American, and I think that also sort of influenced his temperament a little bit, and just made him just a very mellow, chill dude.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jerry, were you asking something?
Peter, are you on the Starship Enterprise?
He is.
I am. I
That's
am.
what I thought so.
The original. Sometimes
That's pretty
people
cool.
think it's a news station or something, but no, it's the Starship Enterprise, the original ship.
The original. Okay. See, I have 70s street cred if I could figure that out, right?
So Meredith, I know you're an author and a writer, and I was a marine educator. So just one thing, that the corsets were actually stiffened by the baleen from the whales. They called it they called it whale bone, but it was the baleen that was in their mouths. So if you know what baleen is, but its other term was whale bone, but it really wasn't the bone.
Oh,
Just
there you go.
Add to your
Okay.
history.
That makes so much more, thank you. That makes so much more sense, because how could you manipulate the actual bone? And wouldn't the bone be too big?
Right, and the baleen are in, you could think of them like pieces of bread. They're very thin, and they are parallel to each other, hanging down in the whale's mouth. And they're made out of the same material as your fingernails, so it's keratin.
Yep.
So those thin pieces, probably they cut them to be in the corset. Sorry, gotta do a little marine mammal education in a bee club,
you.
but
Thank you.
what a wonderful place with history of all sorts that you are part of. So thank you for sharing that about your grandpa's family, because it adds so much more depth to his.
And Meredith, there's a question here in the chat about were your grandfather's bee yards on family land?
Some of them were, yeah. There is right there at the corner of Palo Colorado Canyon and Highway 1, there is a 3-story redwood cabin called the Grimes Ranch. And he had hives there. Those were his cousins. And then he had hives on another ranch called the Glen Devon Ranch, which later became federally protected property, but he was allowed to keep his hives there because he was there first, and he's from a pioneering family, and they all knew him anyway. So that's where I showed you the Garrapatta bee yard was. And then other people just let him put hives in their yards. Yeah.
I'm sure they got honey payments.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Tell us what beekeeping. So I have a question, Bonnie. Do you see me? Ronnie?
Ronnie.
Yeah.
Hi, Ronnie.
Hey, Bonnie.
Yeah.
So I have a question. What is beekeeping in Carmel Valley like now? A lot of competition? Not much? Do you have, when is your dearth? What do your bees like to feed on?
Well, I'm figuring that all out because I just got my 2 colonies within the last month. So what I'm noticing and what I'm reading on the local bee club here is called the Anarchist Bee Club in Montgomery County. It starts the buildup, the nectar flow starts a lot earlier. things started blooming at my house in January, and I don't know when the dearth is going to be coming, but I am imagining I'm in a little bit of an interesting situation because the property I bought, it's 10 acres, but it's the livable part that's not so steep is like 3, and it's fenced in with a deer fence, but the owners landscaped it with California native drought tolerant bee pollinator plants. So what I have here, I can just tell you blooming is lot of lavender, a ton of purple sage, white sage, bottle brush, manzanita. I have manuka tree, olive trees, fruit trees. There's eucalyptus. There's milkweed. There's buckwheat. There's a lot of stuff. And when we looked at the house, when we stepped out on the property the first time, it was April, and the whole place was buzzing so loud. I thought, this has to be the place I'm going to live. I see swarms every day, announcements of swarms every day down here, and usually 4 and 5 a day in Carmel Valley, Salinas, Monterey, Pacific Grove, Carmel. They post them on the anarchist listserv, and people go out and get them. And there's a lot in San Luis Obispo too. So it seems like there are way more swarms than I remember when I lived up in the Bay Area, tons more. You could just pluck bees out of the air, it seems like, down here. But my friends say that there's a lot more competition because it gets so hot that the bloom dries up. So I'm telling you, I don't really know, but those are the things I'm hearing and I'm figuring out.
Thank you.
Is anyone in the area having trouble? What's the rest? Here we go. Africanized bees. Funny you should say that. The question is anyone in the area having trouble with Africanized bees yet? I haven't heard this. However, there is a woman that lives a few doors down, and the property, when she moved to it, came with a top bar hive, and she doesn't know much about it. And those bees recently have been chasing her. And they came after me once when we were just walking on the other side of the yard. So I'm beginning to wonder if there might be an issue with that hive. What about you guys? Are you experiencing anything?
You need to give her one of your queens. If you have if you have some decent bees, give her pinch off her queen and give her one of yours, and that'll maybe mellow them out.
That's what I told her. We need to pinch her queen. I just got a colony last week from a friend in Big Sur who was actually mentored by my grandpa. He gave me some of my grandpa's equipment back when I picked up the colony. But I'm excited. They're Italian and they're hygienic. They're VSH. It's a VSH queen, and I've never tried that before. Actually, I'd be wondering if any of you have any experience with those kind of queens and if they're better or not. Jennifer?
Well, there's a number of us in Marin who are looking for, who are breeding for Varroa resistance. So yeah, I always tell my clients when they see some of the Varroa hygienic behavior is like, the good news is, well, the bad news is you have a problem. The good news is they're responding to it. So, you know, you see the uncapped pupa like in the white eye and the purple eye stage. And I'm like, oh, it's good news and bad news.
Right.
Yeah, I had someone send me a picture today of they were freaking out that their colony was pulling out their drone brood, but not a bad thing. You know,
No.
it's the nectar is drying up here, and less drone reproduction means less Varroa reproduction. So
right.
I'm seeing drones getting kicked out too. Yeah.
No, this wasn't the adults. This was the pupa.
Oh.
that they're pulling out.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give it a try and see, if I have less of a mite issue. I mean, I know that VSH doesn't mean, okay, no mites. It just means they might handle it differently. So,
but the transmission between colonies can still be a problem. I've seen colonies that do great, and then they get invaded with or they either invade or get invaded with colonies that are crashing due to mites, and they can't deal with that much of an influx. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
yeah, there's no like magic answer.
There's no silver bullet. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you remember what major pest your grandfather was dealing with? Like, was he worried about foul brood, or was he worried about wax moth? What was his concern? I just happen to know, like, the World War II guys in my life were always worried about a wax moth invasion. Trying to beat off the wax moth coming in and taking over the hive. So I'm kind of curious, and if you remember what your grandfather was what hive pest he was worried about.
I remember he had foul brood and he had to burn his hives. That was a really awful time. So I don't remember wax moth. Varroa wasn't even an issue for him, at least in the 70s. I don't. So yeah, it was foul brood. And when he passed and I went through all of his things, I found inspection reports from Monterey County that warnings that had been posted on his hives, that he hadn't registered them, and that inspectors found foul brood in this many of his hives, and he had such a time to destroy them. And Grandpa kind of wasn't a rule follower, and he didn't really care. And I think he was a little sloppy in, hygiene and, worrying about that sort of stuff. He was just kind of like, oh, well, sort of attitude about his bees. He did once try to give me, I think it was Apistan, or like he tried to give me some sort of toxic something that he'd had, some sort of mite control towards the end of his life when he was giving me all this stuff. But it was like from 1983, and it was just like raw, so dead. But I know he thought about it and had some stuff, but like if he ever really used it, or he didn't have a maintenance schedule or program or anything like that. He was just really into letting the bees be wild and just dealing with what came.
A little bit of a scofflaw.
Yeah. He just couldn't be bothered. Yeah.
Well, I don't have a question, but I really enjoyed your book a lot. I just wanted to say thank you for writing it. It was very enjoyable. Great story.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it because it was a hard book to write, and it took me 10 years and 3 complete rewrites because I was coming from journalism, where you don't use the word I or me or say what you think about anything, or you get fired, right? So it was really foreign and difficult. And then I think the first version was kind of wounded, and the bees were really just set decoration. Like I hadn't made the connection between what my grandpa was doing for me, and the first versions were sort of glass half empty. And then when I finally matured a little bit as a daughter and as a beekeeper, and Grandpa passed and things changed in my life, then I could write it with a little more compassion and understanding. And so I appreciate that, because I think that's why people are responding to the book, because I really bled for it, and I really love my grandfather and I want to share him with people. And it was a complete passion project, not just a book contract. You know, it was, I would have written it even if nobody paid me for it.
He was a compelling character.
He still is. He still plays tricks on me. I went to, and this is one of the tricks they swear he played on me. I parked at Granite Rock in Seaside, this, rock place. And I have a gray Toyota Tacoma with a classic plate, the black and yellow. And it says Honey Bus, HUNYBUS. And I get out of the car and there's a guy who parked with the exact same truck, exact same color, same plate. And his plate said, "Okay, honey, okay, HUNY." And we just started screaming, laughing. We're like, no way. How could this happen? He said his was for his wife, like, yes, dear, yes, dear. That was a joke with his, but. Yeah.
Peter here again. I was just curious about, you said he had an old gasoline engine that was moving the extractor around. Where did the exhaust go? Did it just go into the bus, or was it shooting? Did he shoot the exhaust out of the bus?
He had a hole and a pipe and it shot out of the bus. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he could have asphyxiated us all, I'm sure. Yeah, my brother was very helpful in writing the memoir, and I would interview him about what he remembered about the bus and what I remembered, and we would be in tears laughing about how dangerous it was in there, and with all the stuff he built, and that was one of them. I had forgotten that exhaust is an issue with an engine, and my brother said, "Dad, don't you remember? He just had this pipe." Right out there by the dry weeds with all the exhaust coming out. I guess so. But yeah, that bus was like Willy Wonka to me. It was just so fascinating. And he wouldn't let us in when we were real small. We had to wait until we were like 6 or 7 before he'd let us in. And I remember trying to break in, as a little thing. But once I was finally granted permission, I was very careful not to, break anything or mess up, because I didn't want my access revoked.
Well, I really enjoyed all your Chronicle columns from years back. I think that really inspired me to be interested in bees, and I enjoyed watching your journey with them on the roof.
That's fantastic. When did you start?
When did I start keeping bees?
Mm-hmm.
I think about 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
But I was sort of teaching about bees at the UC Berkeley Botanical Garden before that.
Oh, okay.
And I was fascinated for a really long time, and your columns were fascinating to me.
Oh, yay. I'm surprised my bosses let me write that column for as long as I could, but eventually, I think after the 3rd year, they said, okay, that's enough about bees. You need to move on. And
well, I was disappointed that there was no end. From what I remembered, I think they got hit with Varroa or were having problems, but I didn't get to hear how all that was resolved. So I was sad about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we did have Varroa problems. We used Mite Away quick strips, and I think we lost one hive, but the other one survived. And then when I left in 2015, I took the bees with me. And I put them, I didn't trust anyone to take care of them properly. Yeah. So I took them and put them in, what was the name of that garden? Little Friendship Garden. No, wait a minute. Little City Gardens. That was in San Francisco, over by, I always forget the name of that neighborhood. Anyway, it's in San Francisco. And they were there for a while, and then the people who own the property put a school there, and they were cool with the bees, with the little kids, but I wasn't. I was a little worried something might happen. And so I then relocated them again to my backyard in Daly City. And then I started beekeeping at Connecticut Friendship Garden in Potrero Hill. And my cat wants to knock my laptop over. Come here. There we go. She's 18.
Oh my.
Yeah.
At 18, she can knock over anything she wants.
Right? She can just eat bologna sandwiches and smoke cigarettes all day long.
Absolutely. Yeah, whatever she wants.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Meredith. Does anyone have any last questions for Meredith? That was really interesting. And yeah, so now I see Nikki applauding. Yeah, if Book Passage is reopening soon, let's shop locally, grab her book there if you can.
I have one last question. Yeah. Are your articles archived with SF Gate?
Yeah, you can search SF Gate. The name of the column was Honeybee Chronicles, and they put together a whole page of all the articles on one webpage.
I remember it being a little hard to find, though.
Oh, you know what? Hold on. I can put it in the chat.
I mean, I found it eventually, but it was quite hard to find.
Unless they took it down. Let's see.
They wouldn't dare.
Oh, you wouldn't be surprised. I think I just found it. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to copy and paste this into the chat. Okay. Look at me go here. There you go.
Oh.
Thank you.
Nice.
You're welcome.
Love the photos of your grandfather.
I know. Isn't he? Yeah, me too.
And he's wearing Levi's.
Oh, yeah.
As a Levi employee, I'm thrilled to see that. So.
Oh, that's why you said that. Okay.
Yay!
Yeah, that's all he wore.
Hey, Marina, when he wore pants, he wore Levi's. There's something to that.
And there really, are there any other pants to wear?
There really aren't.
No.
There really aren't.
Well, this has been a ton of fun. I really appreciate all of all of you taking your time out, especially right now when things are very chaotic. I think it's really great that we can come together and talk about something else.
Thanks for being with us, Meredith. And for all of you, Marina, you're not showing your picture, and a bunch of you aren't either, but for the rest of you that are, it's really nice seeing you, even if virtually. It'll be nice when we can all get together in person again.
Thank you, Meredith.
Yeah, David and I have a standing invitation to talk at Book Passage. So we'll
let us know.
That's resurrected. We'll let everybody know.
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could get signatures by ripping out the title page and sending it to you, and then you could mail it back.
Well, I've discovered there's this thing called, yes, we can do whatever we want.
I'm kidding.
But I've discovered there's this thing called a book plate. For this very reason, the publisher will mail me like this sticky thing, and then I sign it, and then mail it to the person with the book, and they just put it right in their book. There's
Now,
that.
Peter is orbiting on the Enterprise right now, though. Will he be able to have access to that as well?
Yeah, we'll have to get a space capsule up.
Thank you,
I'm going to be up there definitely next year, and I'm working on another memoir that should. It's about my dog. That should come out maybe in a year and a half, but I'm definitely going to. I have lots of friends in Marin, and I'm come through a lot, so I can sign books. And you all can email me. My email is just my name, Meredith the letter A and then May at Gmail, and we can work stuff out.
Yeah, and Meredith, if you're coming up to Marin, like once these things open up again, hopefully maybe you can join us for one of our B meetings and, sign books and do whatever. And,
That's probably the easiest. I'll come to you.
That would be awesome. And we love working with Book Passage and supporting our local bookseller, and selling books at meetings. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love Book Passage. They've let me come in there with bees and honey and do honey tastings and whatever crazy thing I want to do. They're like, yeah, let's do it. And they're really fun. Yeah.
If I may, I'd like to say that Book Passage has a website, and they are selling books online, and you can even buy audiobooks from them, and you're supporting Book Passage instead of Amazon or some of the others. And they also have author interview on every weekend at usually it's 4 to 5 o'clock, and there have been a lot of great authors and very interesting presentations. And so go to bookpassage.com and see what they have to offer, and you can support them that way.
Yeah, that's great.
I see Mr. Stralka is hiding and has his mute on, but Mr. Stralka, would you like to say anything about the virtual county fair while we're still meeting? Dan?
I'm trying to figure out how to unmute it.
You've succeeded.
I haven't figured out, I haven't gotten back to them to see how that's going to be posted. As soon as I find out how that's going to be out there, I will post it on the bus.
Okay. Well, I just want to say that we saw at least 2 frames in this last week that are contenders for best in show for full frame. So I'm hoping that virtual fair is still on.
That's actually, I was talking to the judge the other day, and he was wondering about what he was going to look at on Sunday.
There we go. Hey, Meredith, do you enter your local county fair with your honey?
No.
Oh, you should.
Would I enter? What are you talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry. So this
honey, frames,
So as part of the, each county has a fair. The state subsidizes a fair at each county.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
And in Marin, we have a substantial bee exhibit where we try to do informational stuff. But we also have somewhat of a competition between just all the beekeepers to enter in different hive products, whether it's full frames or honey for tasting or crystallized honey or things made with beeswax, all that sort of stuff. And so unfortunately today, tomorrow, and Saturday would have been the delivering the entries, and Sunday would have been the judging for this year's fair. But unfortunately that's not happening. So the county fair was going to try to do a virtual fair, and we're still trying to get that squared away. And I haven't heard more about how they're going to do that. But they were going to try to do like the, people showing their animals. I guess it would be really weird. How would you do a virtual Ferris wheel? But at any rate, they were going to try to do some things to keep the spirit of the fair going this year.
Oh, that sounds like fun. I wonder if I could slip in a jar of Grandpa's honey and claim. See if I could win.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Monterey County Fair is huge. I remember going to it as a little girl, but I don't remember a beekeeper smackdown. But that's cool. You compete with frames. You're looking for the most robust.
Yeah, full frames. They're all filled all the way. They look pretty. The uniform capping, the color, the display, always an important part. How do you display a full frame and not get it all bashed up? Mm-hmm. And then just the extracted honey. How's it taste? Floral sources, crystallized honey. What else? Comb honey, candles. Just beeswax, rendered beeswax.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting. I'm so competitive. I was,
Oh
I
yeah,
was on
you
the
got
Marin
to get
growing
on that,
team
Meredith.
And
forever.
as you can tell, Bonnie is
Yeah.
not.
Bonnie and Dan are not at all.
Well, then one other thing is they do allow us to have live bees on display, which Dan manages and has for years. So there are now I can't remember the hives, the name.
Observation hives.
Thank you. The observation hives. Yep. So it's just amazing, and people love that. The kids come up and spend hours, and adults looking for the queen, and it's a great collaboration with the beekeepers here.
Oh, nice. You've given me a lot of ideas what to do down here in my new county.
Oh yeah, you got to go for it, Meredith. yeah.
Or it might be there already.
No, I bet it is there. She just needs to enter and get in there. Yeah, take it over. Yeah.
Win. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Meredith.
It's been a lot of fun.
All
I
right,
really
thank
enjoyed
you.
meeting you all.
Thank
A lot
you.
of you are familiar.
Thank you, Meredith, and I look forward to working with you at Book Passage.
Yeah, we'll get that going. Okay. Good night,
Bye now.
everybody.
Be in touch.
Thank you. Goodbye,
Meredith.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Everybody's trying to sign off.